Chansoroy, okay. Oh, Bun is already in Gali, and I thought that I see Sampapon. Okay. Oh yeah.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Bun. So yeah, we already passed the test. So just make sure that you're ready with your slide. Yeah.
I'm done. Thank you. So I will project my slide by myself, or someone will do the screening.
What do you want?
Yeah, I can do that too. Thank you.
Okay, let's just do it by yourself, and then.
Okay, so please go ahead, and my turn, and then I will share the screen by myself. Thank you.
All right.
I think there are almost 30 people in the room. If you want to start.
Yep, let's do it. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to this seminar. This seminar is part of a project supporting young academics in Cambodia and Laos during COVID-19. Focusing on the socio-economic impact of COVID-19. The project received support, and so we would like to thank Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade through their Australia-ASEAN Council. And for this seminar, we would like also to thank Forum Kajian Pembangunan, and Asian Vision Institute for help organize this seminar. We also would like to thank Indonesia Project and Australia Poverty and Equality Research Center for their collaboration in organizing this seminar. So today we will have our team. Our team consists of 12 Cambodian and Lao young scientists. They work in several issues related to the socio-economic impact of COVID. And today we are going to present 5 of this research. So let me go to the first topic that will be presented. It is on the impact on COVID-19 on employment status and household income by Damnang Neil. A little bit background of Damnang. Damnang received 2 master degree, one from Chulalongkorn University in Thailand, and second is from National Institute of Education. Damnang is a research fellow in a center that analyzing development issues in Cambodia. He has worked with several agencies, including Oxfam Cambodia, Catholic Agency Overseas Development, as well as Help Age Cambodia. So without further ado, I would like to, so the format of this presentation is that we are going to go all the presentation 15 minutes for each presenter. And then at the end, we will have Q&A, so you could ask anything about what has been presented. Please, Danang, now is your 15-minute slot to present your work.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much to ANU that provide the sponsor for the qualitative training for 6 months ago, and this is the result after I participate with this training. And thank you so much to the AVI that arranged the qualitative training in Cambodia. That this course it provide me a lot of new experience and also knowledge related to the qualitative training. So my name is Damnang, I'm research fellow or research for the ADIC, and I would like to share some snapshot about the employment status among the household in Phnom Penh that affected by the social economy. Yeah. Please go ahead. Okay, so my outline, the first one I would like to share about the background in Phnom Penh during the COVID and before COVID, and after that the study of GA measure, and I would like to compare between the employment before and during COVID-19, and after that the main occupation before and during, and after that the average monthly income for each household in Phnom Penh, and then the compare the income before and during COVID, and after that the conclusion. So according to the National Institute of Statistics in 1999 and 1920, in Phnom Penh the working age population in Southern is 130, and this working age is mostly work at the service sector 39.8%, and industry 27%, and the manufacture 16.7%. And before COVID, the income per household in average is 3,714 real in 1,000, but during the COVID, some research informed that the household income fell by 30 or 60%, depend on the sector that a participant work or have the occupation before COVID. Yeah. So the objective of this study is just I want to say about the employment status among the household in Phnom Penh, just a snapshot. The main purpose is that the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the social economic. So we use the measure by to collect the data by a phone call, and then we target all district in Phnom Penh, and we use the structure interview questionnaire to interview and to get data from the participant. And after that, we see that the total respondent is 500, and among them, 41.4% are female. So what we see that among the 500, only 1% that have the ID pool. So the ID pool, let me say that this is the ID pool card that poor people or poor households to get the free charge of service include currently Royal Government of Cambodia focus on the health public service. So in case all the household have the ID pool, so they can access to the health service without pay or pay a little bit in case of they got the serious illness. So it is much support and much opportunity for the household that have the ID pool. And during the COVID time, the government also support some monthly salary to the household who have the ID pool card, because the government think that those household will mostly affected by the COVID pandemic. As you can see that this slide is compare the employment before and during COVID. So according to this result, when we ask the respondent with the question about the employment before and during the COVID, so we can see that before the COVID, the people or the total respondent, 95.6% of them have the employed. And during COVID, they decreased into 12.4%. It means that 12.4% they lost their job. And when we ask them about some of them before COVID, 4.4% of them respond that they don't have the job yet, or they don't employ by any company. This is because of their age is the highest. It means that they were over 50 years old, so maybe they really depend on their family, so they don't have a job beside housework. So in compared to the during COVID, the decreased percentage is the same as the people who have employed by other sector. So in general, this slide provides the information that before COVID and during COVID, the people or the respondent who have the job was decreased 12.4% when COVID occurred in Cambodia. This slide provides information about the man occupation before and during COVID. So I would like to highlight 3 main occupation in here. The first is trading. As you can see that the trading here is decreased compared before and during the COVID. It decreased 1.6%. So this trading is include also the small we call the family business. So it was decreased 1.6% during the COVID happened in Cambodia. And the second one, and it is also the highest increase percentage among this main occupation is the hotel and restaurant. So most of respondents report that this sector, some of them, they close the hotel when the hotel owner or the restaurant owner closed, so they lost their job. So it is decreased 2.2% in comparing before the COVID. And the last one is that respondent who work in the education sector also lost their job 1.8%. So this is the 3 main occupation among the other that we got the information from the respondent that have the highest decrease in compared before and during the COVID. So the average income, when we compare before the COVID, the average income that among the 500 respondents, we see that 29.2% of respondents, they got the salary between 300 to under 600. And for 24.8% of them get the salary below 1,200, and the smaller one is that they get the salary below 300. It means that 5.6% of them. So in compare between the income of each household before and during COVID, when we asked them about their rate to say for the respondent, they said that 53.5% of them informed that their salary was increased. So this is include also other not the main salary at all, but other benefit that they got from their employment. So 53.5 percent of them informed that they was decreased their salary, and 27.7 just informed that their salary is remain the same before and during COVID, and only 1.8% of them they informed that their salary was increased. So this one is the mostly for the high rank or the high rank position in among the total participation, 41.4 are female that they join with our survey, and 90% of them they don't have the ID pool. So this is the main effect to their income and also their expense, because they don't have the ID pool. It means that they need to spend their earn money or their income before COVID to spend in case of they need to buy public service, mainly in the health sector. And also the response report that 58.2% of them are home at hometown. And before COVID, they can work. 95.6% of them have a job and work from 40 to 48 hours per week. So also they can earn more income in case of they get or they work more than that. And after that, during and before the COVID, 29.2% could earn in average monthly income from 300 to 600 before COVID. This is the highest percentage among respondents. And after that, we see that during the COVID happened, 53.5% of them informed that their salary was increased. So, sorry. So in general, we see that when the 9 occur in Cambodia, especially in Phnom Penh, it affects to the working hour and also the income of a household in Cambodia. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Damnang, for the nice and clear presentation. For everyone, please hold your. Everybody has presented their work, but meanwhile, you are welcome to put your question in Q&A, and so you not forget about what you would like to ask, and then later I will ask some of you to say your question in verbal. All right, second, let's move to the second presenter. We have over here 3 people writing or working on a topic, the effect of COVID between ICT, related to ICT, employment, security. So the team consists of Hanurik Han, and then Chan Sophie Ngorn and Sophia Chuan. I will explain a little bit the background of them. So let me first say a little bit about Hanurik Han. He received a master's degree from Victoria University, Wellington, New Zealand, and in public policies, and an undergraduate from University of Phnom Penh on tourism management. He is currently working as a lecturer in the Department of Tourism at the Royal University of Phnom Penh. The second member of the team is Chan Sophie Ngorn. Let me try to read about her. So Chan Sophie, is a researcher and operation manager at the Center for Policy Studies, which is a policy research think tank in Cambodia. So she received a master's degree in applied anthropology and participatory development from Australian National University, as well as a master's degree in project management and entrepreneurship from Lyon 2 and Life and Lille in French. The third one is Chon. Sophia graduated with master degree in public policy from University of Auckland and bachelor degree in development economics from Northern University, as well as a bachelor degree in English from University of Puti Sastra. Let me read where is, so now Sophia is a research advisor on labor migration management at Ratanak International. So I believe the one that going to make the presentation is Hanurik. Please, Hanurik, this is your 15 minutes. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for your introduction, Professor Budy, and also extend my long for making this happen and support from the University of the ANU and area. My name is Anurat, and already introduced by Professor Budy, and our interest is to the relationship between the ICT, employment, and food security with COVID-19 outbreak in Phnom Penh. I'm Sophie and Sophie Chan Yun and Sophie Jun. First of all, I would like to introduce the context of the research was conducted during the pandemic outbreak between June and August 2021. Also, at times, some parts of Phnom Penh was still locked down.
That's correct. Was classified into the red zone, yellow zone. So to some extent, the red zone and orange zone was restricts accessibility or the movement of the people, and the yellow zone with less restrict in movement. So people can have access to their employment or their or shop. And so this showed the level of accessibility or movement to people in Phnom Penh during the time. And the total list of respondents, target respondents that we received only was 8,350 a household, and the rejection rate was high at 80%. And so after the completion of the data collection, we collected status was 45%, and the average household size was 4.65. So, and also the average age was 36.24 years old. Almost everyone, only 2 respondents did not use the mobile phone. So we got 99.6% that used a mobile phone. And all districts and around Phnom Penh, we classify it into urban or peri-urban according to the classification of World Bank. So the distribution of the respondent across different districts in Phnom Penh is shown in the map. And the material that we use the material from the projects conducted in June. So not all 501 sample that was included in the study. So because we applied the cutoff age and at 18 to 60 years old. So according to NFF is the active labor force. So we mainly focus on those who active in labor force. So our interest is to understand the relationship between the use of ICT, employment, and food insecurity in Phnom Penh during the COVID outbreak. Our variable, we didn't use all the variable from the original study. So we have demographic variable, and we recoded the variable into a dummy variable. So we got dependent variable is the food secure or food insecurity for one and 0 for otherwise. And we got other independent variables such as demographic characteristic, migration status, geographical resident, urban versus peri-urban. Occupational sector we classified according to the ILO 2014 that become the aggregated sector into agriculture, industry, and service. And also type of employment, numbers of hours that we separate into the 40 hours cut point, because 40 hours that is the considered full-time worker, or less than 40 hours that might fall into the part-time workers. And the ICT variable include tablet ownership, computer, having access to computer at office, and the using computer at home. Sorry, and employment status we recoded into its employment or employed for one and 0 for otherwise. Our finding, among the respondents that we applied the criteria for cut-off point, that we found that about among the active age that in labor force, about 13.50% that were unemployed during that time. And the unemployment rate was high among immigration, those with immigrant status, about 60%, and compared to non-migrant employment employees that equal to 11%. And unemployment rate was high in urban, peri-urban area, about 63.20%, and compared to urban only 70%. And the relationship between the ICT was significant. For example, there is a relationship between owning a tablet, having access to the computer at office, or using computer at home, has a relationship with positive relationship with employment. So and all the p-value was corrected using Benforoni corrections. The change of total number of work per hour per week was significant. So, and also we found that those who were self-employed working longer than those people who employ and the freelancers. The median for the self-employed was 42 hours per week, and the other three group was 40 hours per week. Related to ICT and the total number of working per week, we found that according to the main Whitney U test, we found that there is a relationship between the device ownership and having access to the computer at office with the number of working. So the number of working different between those who own or have access to computer at office, or who did not have access to a computer at office. The prevalence of food insecurity was 34%. Our respondent reported some form of food insecurity, and however, the severity was not equal. Like the who were in the severe, the most severe was only 6.30%, less severity was 9, and casually eat less than usual was 21%. So it made up of 34. So, and we observed that the prevalence of food insecurity was high among the service worker, about 64.7%. And among those who employ are also high, about 52.80%, and low in the self-employed group. In order to predict the food insecurity, we used two models. The first model, we interested in whether employment or unemployment could also significant with the food insecurity, and we found that the employment has a significant contribution to the model. For the model 1, so those who were unemployed have a higher chance of food insecurity compared to those employed, about 2 times that the odds of food insecurity. And those who work in the agricultural sector were more susceptible to food insecurity, about 5 times the odds of food insecurity compared to those who work in non-agricultural sectors. And also the industrial sectors also made significant contribution to the model. It's about those who work in industry had the odds of food insecurity of 3 times compared to those who work working in non-industrial sectors. Other variables that did not contribute significantly to the model, such as household size, migration status, or geographical location areas of those people. And our model too, because we found that those who are unemployed were 2 times the odds of having food insecurity compared to those employed. So we interested in whether is there any to predict those employed during that time. So we the model to focus on those who were employed and have access to ICT and also internet. So our model in the model 2, we found that those people who are working in agriculture similarly have 2 times the odds of food insecurity, and the industry had almost 3 times. Sorry, the agriculture was 8 times, and the industry was 3 times the odds of food insecurity compared to other sectors. And those who did not own the tablets were more likely to face the food insecurity. And similarly, with those who did not have access to the computer at office, also are more susceptible to the food insecurity. And those who work less than 40 hours per week were also more likely to have food insecurity, or we can. Although we might not fair say that it is a part-time worker, but those who work equal to part-time worker are almost 5 times having food insecurity compared to those who work more than 40 hours per week. So in conclusion, the overall unemployment in during that COVID-19 pandemic were high, about 13%, and the highest percentage of unemployment were in peri-urban area, and those with the migration status. And ICTs could have eased the food insecurity status among among respondents, and also those who work
more than 40 hours also could face less severity of, or could face less or unlikely to have food insecurity. So, but we found that, interestingly, we found that who use the computer at home were 2 times the odds of food insecurity, and this is open to discussions. And why owning tablet and have access to the computer at office could reduce the food insecurity, but using the computer at home would have 2 times the odds of food insecurity. And maybe because we are not moving out of our traditional working environment, so we have to move to the office to work. It's open to discussion because of other factor might affects this finding. And this is bring me to the end of my presentation. And thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Han and Hanurak and team, Chen Sophie and Sophia. I'm sure that people listening to this presentation would like to ask questions. It is interesting that several conditions is actually affecting people food security differently during COVID. But yeah, please put your question in the Q&A, and then during the Q&A session, I will allow you to read your question. So the third presenter will be Yan Soporn. Yeah. She is the Deputy Director of Center for Governance, Innovation and Democracy in the Asian Vision Institute. She has a master's degree from in public policy from Australian National University and master's degree in management from Panasastra University of Cambodia. So her topic will be the impact on the impact of COVID-19 on household expenditure and employment. Yan, this is your 15 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Please give me a minute to share the presentation. Okay. Is the slide okay?
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you and good morning again from Phnom Penh and Indonesia, and good afternoon for those who are attending from Australia. It is my great pleasure to be part of today's seminar. I'm going to focus on our recent study on the socio-economic impacts of COVID-19 onto the Cambodian household, particularly on the urban resident in Phnom Penh. I'm going to share the findings on the changes of expenditures and employment of the household in urban Phnom Penh. But before we go into the findings, I would like to give you an overview, the context of the Cambodian situation or COVID-19 studies. As you know, COVID-19 has been rapidly evolved quickly from an emergency to a pandemic. With this pandemic, it has caused a lot of disruption, reduction in social and economic activities. So we can see there is a high fall of demand in discretionary consumption and service-related sectors such as leisure, travel, hospitality, logistics, and physical meetings and conferences. Although there are non-pharmaceutical interventions and restriction measures being implemented by the governments and by the global health system, the infection rate has been increased and fluctuated over a period of time. And those measures has put a lot of livelihood and well-being of millions of people around the world into an uncertainty and unpredictable. So these many study has been focusing around the world on the social impacts of COVID-19, but there is a limited study for the developing countries such as Cambodia. So our interest here as a Cambodian, we actually would like to observe and understand more about what has changed, what has impacted on the livelihood of our urban people in Phnom Penh. As an overview, as you know, Cambodia has a population of about 15.5 million people. 51% of them are women. The density is only 86% per kilometer square. The total land is 181,000 kilometers square. But in Phnom Penh alone, there are 2.1 million people. Again, more than 50% of them are women, but the city is crowded with 3,136 people per kilometer square, with a total land of only 679 kilometers square. Looking at the timeline of the pandemic that has happened in Cambodia, the pandemic has hit Cambodia back on the 20th February 2021. The first community outbreak was reported, and the rise of infection started to grow until April 2021. The government decided to lock down some provinces, as you saw in the previous presentation. There were red, yellow, and orange areas. So the lockdown was held majorly in Phnom Penh, Kandahar, Siem Reap, and a few more provinces follow. The lockdown happened for over a month, but then reopen, stop the lockdown. But the restriction for movement, travel, physical interaction has been limited. The government encouraged only digital and remote interaction or remote business activities only. But until November 2021, although the infection has not been better, the government had to reopen its economy. It allowed people to travel, to remove, but the government has put the vaccination campaign, encouraging people to get at least 2 doses. So the infection rate has been declined until May. We observed that May 2022, the decline of infection to 0 for over 50 days. Until yesterday, 10 new cases reported. If we look at the number of vaccination administration, about 94.6% of the total population has got at least 2 doses. And kids between 3 to 4 years old got 2 doses, now increased from 22% to 36.6%. And we not only administer at least 2 doses, but we provided up to 5 doses to our people in Cambodia. And for the infection rate, as I told before, only a few days we have 10 new cases. So we hope to have reduced the cases to 0 again. If you look at the economy of Cambodia, you can see in the graph on the right-hand side, I apologize that it is in Khmer, but I can explain you right now. The blue represents the agriculture, the green talks about the industry, and the yellow is about the service industry. So economy of Cambodia, the GDP of Cambodia is contributed largely by the 3 sectors: agriculture, industry, and service industries. Over the years, we have managed to have the GDP growth of an average 7.7% between 1998 to 2019. But in 2020, you can see that the GDP growth was negative to minus 3.1%. But if you look into the detail, the agriculture sector has been positive. It has been positive since 2020, and it is being increasing over the period of time. So it is expected to grow at 1.3% by 2022. At the same time, we can see the industry and the service sectors are recovering to rise from 7.4% for the industry to 8.4% in 2022. Similarly, the service sector is expecting to rise in 2022 by 5.4%. If you look at the GDP growth in the developing Asia, the rate is expected to get better, in average 5.2 to 5.3% in 2022 and 2023, respectively. So Cambodia somehow is in a positive trend for recovery. As you just saw, the sector that are driving force for economy are the industry, agriculture, and service sectors. With the hit of the pandemic in 2020 to 2021, those industries who are the major employers of Cambodia have been struggling. So the number of jobs lost, the decreasing of working hours has been noted. According to UNICEF, there were about 45% of the household continue to experience their income loss, and about 70% of the earners experience the lower income, about 13% compared to the pre-pandemic. Tourism as a service sector reduced its operation to the minimum because it depends largely on internal travelers who have difficulty to travel with their income challenge as well as their employment issue. Government and construction similarly have reduced their operation due to the decline of the global demand. Although the manufacturing exports and agricultural commodity exports are increasing or recovery, but the trade deficit has been widened significantly according to the World Bank. But interestingly, we can observe that electronic vehicle parts, agro-processing industry, such as food and wood processing and furniture, are rising up as somehow a leading sector for economic growth. But if we look at the food inflation, it is at the moderate rate, which is about 2.5% in 2021. The inflation rate in the developing country is around 3.7%, but Cambodia has so far managed to have 2.9% and expecting to decline in 2.2%. This low food inflation is mainly because of the less severe supply disruption between the developing country with the supply chain. So I'm going to skip this slide because it's about how we collect the information in Cambodia, the phone interview. Okay, and this is two. Based on the phone interview among 501 people who are living in Phnom Penh, we can observe in the first graph, which is on the left-hand side, that the number of people in overall has been declined, as Mr. Hanmadat mentioned, about 13% of the employment decrease. But if you look into specific men and women, the number of men working declined from 285 to 247, while women working declined from 194 to 170. So you can see that the percentage of decline between men and women is like 20 to 10%. But if we look at the those who have not been working before and during the pandemic, both men and women have impact largely by the unemployment between 3 to 5 times. More people, more men and women did not work during the pandemic. But if we look at the type of works they do, either before or during the pandemic, most of them are working as employees. They are working for someone, for some company. And the other 180 people are mostly work as self-employed, either with no employment or with paid workers. And about 40 to 30 people are mostly work as freelance workers. If we look specifically for the period in the pre-COVID-19, the sectors that are that hold a lot of employment are in the trading, construction, education, hotel and restaurants, construction, and social services and government. But if we look into the employment type during the pandemic, the driving sectors are trading, education, social services, construction, finance and insurance, and hotel and restaurants. We can observe that before the pandemic, hotel and restaurant was like the fourth employers leading the economy. But during the pandemic, the rising of the social service and government has been increased, pushing, not pushing, but the demand for jobs in the hotel and restaurant has declined from let me see, from 7% to 5.76%. In terms of working hours, we can see that before the pandemic, which is in between January and February 2020, most people working between 40 to 49 hours a week. About 20% work between 50 to 58 hours per week, and about 5% each work 8 hours per week, or between 60 to 68 hours per week. So we can say that before the pandemic, people at least work 1 day per week up to full week. But during the pandemic, you can see in the second graph on the right-hand side, most people work between 32 to 40 hours, and then about 24% work between 42 to 50 hours, and another 10% works between 24 to 40 hours, and 9.8% work between 52 to 70 hours. Or we can say that in average, people work more hours, work longer, or at least 3 days per week. When we look at the expenditure before the pandemic, whether they work or they have not worked, we can see that the majority of the expenditure, either they work or do not work, the expenditure is in between $300 to $600 per month. And there are some bigger percentage 18% for those who are working, spend between $600 to $900. And for those who don't work, they spend quite high, about 1.4%. They work. They spend almost or more than $1,200 per month. But in overall, we can see from the graph that in similarity, either they work or don't work, their every expenditure before the pandemic is between most people spend between $300 to $600. But if we look in between the pre until the pandemic, regardless they work or not, regardless of employment, the sector they belong to, the respondents shows that the majority of people have not changed on the expenditure over a period of time. And about 1/3, 30% have managed to reduce the expenditure, but other 30% of them have to increase the expenditure. But the increase or the increase or decrease is mostly, we can observe here, is between 300. Between it's. Most of them spend between $200 to $400. Either they increase or decrease, it's between $200 to $400 per month in expenditure. So when we ask them, have you or your family eaten less than usual due to the shortage of money or source of fund, we observe that most of them say not at all. 63% they don't feel they have eaten less. Of few, about 6.4%, they say often they eat less, but most of respondents say they haven't eaten less. So in summary, based on the study, we found that a lot of, not a lot, the percentage of employment is about 13%. And I haven't highlighted on the gender, but actually the number of working women was less than the number of working men. So we could say that the percentage that women lose the job is more than men during the pandemic. But in terms of the expenditure, most of the respondents, most of the people in Phnom Penh has managed to keep their expenditure or have managed to reduce their expenditure, but 30% of them, they face the increased expenditure. But in terms of working hours, we noticed that they work longer, they work more days than the pandemic period. And in terms of food consumption, there was a positive trend that they have not eaten less, whether they work or not. Mostly in general, they have not eaten less. I think that's come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Yan. That's good that you provide also a bigger picture on what happened in Cambodia during COVID. I would like to move to the fourth presentation, which is about business recovery pathway for Cambodia. The presenter is Boon Sambat. A little bit background about Sambat. He is currently the Secretary General of Young Entrepreneur Association of Cambodia. The association focuses on supporting young entrepreneur and micro, small and medium enterprise ecosystem in Cambodia. Sambat received a master's degree in public policy from Australian National University in 2013, And prior to that, he received a bachelor degree in education in English from Royal University of Phnom Penh. So without further ado, Sambat, this is your 15-minute slot.
Thank you, Professor Budy, and very good morning from Cambodia and everyone, and afternoon in Australia. Dr. Kamlong and also Professor and also the scholar and also my colleagues in here. So my presentation will be divided into two parts because we have done a very small impact survey among the Young Entrepreneur Association, also SME during the early breakdown of the COVID in Cambodia. And I think Sopon provide some overview of the Cambodian economic situation, and our college have present some feature from the employee perspective. Now I'm presenting and sharing all some of the finding from the employer perspective, because Young Entrepreneur Association working with a young entrepreneur and also SME in Cambodia. So we have done a small research survey among the member, and also the business recovery pathway is more a panel discussion on 12 sector or 12 chapter that discussing the different impact on the business in different sector. Okay, so very brief, and I will not go into detail in all the four, but as mentioned, this is early impacts of the COVID on the MSME in Cambodia. So a brief about the survey finding, and the second one about the recovery pathway, and the number 3 and number 4 is more the policy recommendation for the government and also for the development partner. So I might not go in detail for the number 3 and number 4 as well. Okay, so the survey we have done is a early impact on the MSME, which we have done with around 300 members of the YAC members, so which cover a lot, mostly in Phnom Penh and also in the province where we have our chapter member as well. So mostly in Siem Reap, mostly affected by the COVID, especially on the tourism, and I think Dr. Kamlong also will present that in the next presentation. So these are some of the data set that we have received. Most of them are a registered company that we call small medium enterprise, and then some of them are not yet a registered company as well. And we have divided them into by the annual turnover and the number of employees. That's based on the definition of the MSME in Cambodia. And most of them, we can see that they are in the travel, tourism, and food and beverage in the survey. And the next popular number are the people from the business, trade, logistics, and the service. We have some from education, technology, agriculture, and food processing. So these are the findings that we have found from the early impact. So we can see all of the sector are impacted by the early impact of the COVID, especially the travel, tourism, and food beverages. 90% of them said they all affected. And there are 4 major reasons why it's impact their operation, their finance, and their management, especially to affect their cash flow. So you can see the very big percentage. Number 1 is the financial impact. So when the COVID comes, it's impact their cash flow. There's ability to repay back or the debt to renegotiate on the financing option with the whatever investor or with the bank. The second effect is the employee productivity. It's negatively impact during that time and the productivity of the people. Number 3 is about the inventory price. It keeps increasing, and also the quality, and also the supply chain issue because of the logistic and the network, including the both inbound and the outbound transportation. And lastly is the increasing of the consumer confidence. When during that time, a lot of people have been focused on their health, so they forget about, they they cannot fulfill their contract because of the delay of the supply chain, because of the logistics. So it affects the contract that had been signed, or they have been delayed, or sometimes have to be canceled. So these are the 4 major impacts on their business operation. All right, I will not go into too details about the loss during that time. So you can see a big loss. That is an early impact again. So there should be a update on that. So estimately during that time, there's a big loss of the income or profit for the SME is around, let's say, $65 million during the early impacts. There's a very quick survey, and then later on we have done the business recovery survey for 12 chapter. So that's mostly a panel discussion. So totally we have 49 experts from different fields, different sectors to discuss. And one of them is Dr. Kamlang to share about geopolitics in Cambodia, in ASEAN, and in the globe as well. So we reach out people through the Zoom, through Facebook Live, and also through engagement. So this is something that I said. And these are the list of the chapter we were discussing, including the geopolitics, economic development, and SME, and perspective from the investor about investment strategy for the entrepreneur. The recovery is more perspective from the expert who are running a business in that sector, including the private education, the common suggestion from the financial institution, especially microfinance bank, and also the government agency in providing financial support to the SME. So it pathway from agriculture and agro-business, trade and retail, logistic, transportation, manufacturing, those who are working in the e-commerce or online business, and hospitality, and also the real estate and construction. And finally, we have some discussion from business association, including International Chamber, what are their intervention or activity during the 2 years of COVID in Cambodia. Okay, I will go very briefly among the 12 chapter. I will pick up only 2 to 3 comments from the expert during the discussion. For example, on chapter 1, we discuss the geopolitics. So the expert have mentioned 4 main opportunities that the Cambodian SME can seize during that time. For example, like raw material in Cambodia is still cheap and it can be accessed locally. The return of investment on the real estate were very high, so it should be time to convert into the manufacturing sector. Also, the flow of the labor from the abroad in the country, so it's time to diversify and make use of the lower cost of the labor in Cambodia. And there's a potential for domestic market, which is especially during the COVID, because we can see we don't need to import from outside. So how can we make use of the local or domestic products into the domestic market? For chapter 2, we focus on the investment. You can see that health always come first when the COVID comes. So people always take intervention on health than to discuss about the investment. But the expert also mentioned that SME should form a short-term plan, which can be flexible to quickly responsible to the situation change if they have the sufficient capital. If not, they can also discuss with the financial institution or any investor who had previously want to invest. And also it's opportunity for the investor who want to invest in a certain business, because MSME might want to increase need the funding or capital in order to maintain or also to diversify the business. And also the SME need a business continuous plan, they need a reserve fund, and also to have to differentiate between their core business and also a non-core business during that time, what they should focus. Chapter 3 is about vocational training. So those who are in this sector need to be innovative, because people do not travel, they go online. So online and digital platform are important. They have to strengthen their team management. Budget is very important in order to maintain the operation and also to make sure that the business stays alive for a certain period of time to move after the situation. I skip number 4 and I go to number 5 is about the agriculture and agro business. So they need to work on the ecosystem about the local supply chain than the import from outbound. They need to understand about free trade agreements. So how can they focus on the product development and the opportunity to trade across the border, while Cambodia is start opening on the RCEP perspective, and also a lot of free trade agreement with China and also with some other countries. So MSME need to understand about that. And also during that time, incentive from the government is also important in order to have or somehow can support some part of the operation. Product option, so these are something they need to learn what can be done or what can be learned from the research or statistic, so they can more diversify their products into the market. So they cannot just produce the same thing. For the long term, the recommendation is about investing in human resource, investing in technology, and a compliant procedure where their product can go widely in the countries or even can export into the foreign market. That's for 6 is for the trading and retail. So people cannot go physically into the store. So online sale and expansion of this distribution channel in order to reach customer is important. So digital marketing and digital sale are important for the business people during that time. And also they need to be very focused and to understand the market well. So they need to review the sale report in order to make the projection from time to time to make sure their sale, their inventory, and also shipment is on time, because there's a lot of issue in terms of logistic, in terms of transportation, and in terms of the raw material. So these are something that they need to focus in during that time. Number 6 is about the chapter 7 is about logistic and transportation. So we can see the transportation logistic is very difficult. Even until now, it's still the problem. And a lot of suggestion that we need to increase the land shipment so it costs less. And we need to promote the local products, because we have abundance of the local product which have not been into the market because of the logistic and also transportation issue. And they also encourage the SME to make use of the tax incentive from the government during this period of time, while the government have set up a lot of intervention, tax incentive, or many government agencies, including like SME bank, credit guarantee scheme for the SME. So make sure how the SME can make use of that as well. Manufacturing, so SME should focus on the research on the new products, the new flavor in order to enter the market, which is help them to expand their market, and market expansion strategy is important. They need to cooperate or partnership with different education institutions in order to enhance their employee skill during that time, especially the digital skill. Modernization of the new technology, again, in order to enhance the qualities and hygiene and also the skill in producing different types of product. In order to compete in the local or international market, there's opportunity for them to survive. Number 9 is about the e-business. So again, it's just everyone go online. So we need to know, we need to understand, and also learn how to do the business online and what are the platforms that they can sell their products. So they have to discover and also learn how to manage that. So it's a lot of work that they need to push themselves in order to understand about the digital platform. Number 10 is about hospitality. I will not into that deep because Dr. Kamnong will go into that. So especially people in Siem Reap who are focused on tourism, so they need to different type of business, or they have to diversify their investment in order to survive during that time. And there's a lot of example from the next presentation as well. Lastly, it's about real estate and construction. So a lot of people are affected by the payment of the construction, especially in the project that target the low-income people, because the customer mostly they are in the service industry. And also the expert also suggests that if we want to invest in that sector, we need to very carefully select the projects that we want to invest. All right, so I would conclude my presentation as a recommendation on the policy response, that's about resolve, resilient, and return. Is about temporary tax release on all the deferral of the money tax from the government, banking release program, or any existing loan to support the SME. And SME itself have to work a bit harder on the working capital loan in order to manage their business. And the government can support the SME in terms of a government risk share scheme, anything that we can do. And the government have done something on that, especially credit guarantee scheme or the SME bank. And again, business expansion and loan on investment, this is something in order in the long term to make sure their business stay in the operation. All right, and we have the podcast on those 12 recovery pathway, but it's in local language. Thank you so much. So I would conclude my presentation just like this. Thank you, Dr. Budy and Dr. Gamlong and everyone.
Thank you, Sambat, for an interesting presentation. Before we have seen presenter presenting the impact of COVID on employment, and turn out that Sambat has outlined, but the micro and small enterprise are trying to respond to this impact, and good to see the outline of these responses. Now we are going to move to our last presentation. This is about the impact of COVID-19 on tourism, micro, small, and medium enterprises. And the presenter is Dr. Kim Long. So let me read a bit about Dr. Kim Long. He is currently the Vice President and Director of the Center for Governance Innovation and Democracy in the Asian Vision Institute. Dr. Kim Long received a PhD degree in economics from Australian National University, Master in Economics from Kobe University, and Master in Business Administration in Preston University. Without further ado, I would like to allow Dr. Kim Long to present his presentation in this 15-minute slot. Please.
First of all, thank you so much, Professor Budy, Resosudarmo, the head of the Indonesian Project. And I have to thank my colleagues for putting together the efforts in the data collection. And I have to thank the Australian-ASEAN Council for funding the training for the young academic in Cambodia and Laos. And this research has been funded by the Australia Awards of Cambodia. And I think in conjunction with the efforts by my teams from the Asian Vision Institute, I have to thank all of them once again. I will go briefly to what it is about and why we do it. So my presentation is about a snapshot of the impact of COVID-19 on SMEs, and particularly within the tourism sector in Cambodia. I think there will be some key highlights of the impact on employees as well in the tourism sector. So about the background, I think given the many impacts we have seen so far that have been unfolded as the result of the widespread pandemic globally, we have seen tourism sector in Cambodia have been hit hard. As of September 2020, there has been a report that about 30% of the businesses in Cambodia, particularly in the tourism sector, have been shut down and at least suspended temporarily. And approximately 62% of them are in Siem Reap. But later in 2021, the statistic went up and about 80% of tourism businesses in Siem Reap have been shut down as a result of COVID-19, and also the restrictions, travel restrictions regionally and globally. And this is a snapshot. I think my colleagues and also the earlier presenters have already shared those updates, and I will skip this to go directly to what the research is all about and how we collected the data. So the purpose of this small survey is to understand overall impacts and challenges facing businesses and workers, particularly those in the tourism sector in Cambodia. And we do that in 6 provinces, including in Phnom Penh, in Siem Reap, in Sihanoukville, in Kampot, Kat, and Mondulkiri. So just to give you an idea of where these are. So Phnom Penh is the capital city, and Siem Reap is the main tourist destination, followed by Kampot, Kat, and Sihanoukville, where Mondulkiri is one of the tourist destination for both locals, the locals and the international tourists. And the coastal areas where attract more and more tourists, Siem Reap, Kampot, Kat, Sihanoukville. By the way, Mondulkiri province, which is to the north, to the east part of northeast part of Cambodia, which is very far from here, has also gained a lot of interest from the both local and international tourists. The data collection was made during July and August 2021, and we could manage to collect the data by conducting the interview, the physical interview, face-to-face interview with 304 tourism businesses in the 6 provinces. And on the right panel here, you can see what the type of businesses, including transportation by bus, air, ticket, tourism operators, and also the ticketing businesses, taxi, and tour guide, souvenir shops, restaurant or cafeteria, hotel accommodation, guest house, including boutiques, food, beverages stall, all of these that serve the tourism businesses and tourism sectors. We have booking, reservation services as well, including those walk-in and also those online operating firms, the massage, body care, all of those that provide some kind of services to the tourist, mainly for the international tourist. So in a snapshot, you can see that out of the 6 provinces in Kampot, Kat, Mondulkiri, Phnom Penh, Siem Reap, Sihanoukville, family business outnumber, so 197. Because I think in Cambodia, as well as in many other developing countries, the majority of the small and medium enterprises family-owned, or at least at the micro level. Now it managed and operated by individual person. Limited private limited company ranked second, followed by startup, 12, registered and non-registered at the same number, and others on 3. So a total of 304 business firms operating in the tourism sectors have been interviewed. I would like to go straight to the impact on business operations. By the time we interviewed, 8% of 304 business firms in the tourism sectors in the 6 provinces closed completely by that time. I think this number changed and it increased more, I think, or it recently, as a result of the reopening of the economy, the number might have changed. 38% were temporarily suspended, and 54% remain operating throughout the pandemic. However, 32% of them reduced their operation hours. They cut down on the time due to the slowdown of their businesses, the reduced numbers of clients and coming to their or needing their services. 1% closed the on-site customer services, and 21% work normally. So this is out of the 24 or 54% that were operating normally throughout the pandemic. For income impacts and also revenue impacts during the COVID-19, that have provide some disruptions to their business operation. We have seen that 55% of the 304 business firms we interviewed reduced their operating, which have reduced their operatings, or whether they were operating normally, have seen more than 75% in revenue reduction, or at least sale reduction. I think that which has been converted into or translated into their revenue. About 29% experienced the decline in revenue and income from between 50 to 75%, and 12.24% have seen decline in revenue or sale by about 50% or lower. Out of those people and businesses that have been affected, we have seen that the majority of employees that have been affected were women. So 88% compared to about men, around 80%, encountered a decline of about 50% of their revenue. So men and women reported here refer to the businesses headed by women. So impact on employment and labor. I think if you look at this pie chart, you have seen, but I will read from the right panel. About out of those 304 businesses, it's represent about 4,186 employees. So for over 4,000 employees were employed in those 304 tourism businesses. At least around 54 of them are female, so the majority are female. That's why in the previous slide we have seen that the majority of those affected by COVID-19 that have seen the decline in revenue or sale in their businesses are women. 77% of 99 tourism businesses that were still operating reduced staff from about half to more than 2/3 of their total employees. The majority of the laid-off staff again are women. Only 23% of the operating businesses have laid off. I think I may change this one. Not only remove it. 23% of the operating businesses have laid off all of the employees. So you have seen 23% of the 304 businesses will result in some large amount of employees being lost their job, and so they had faced the consequences of income loss and also livelihoods consequences. The high proportion of the laid-off employees were among companies who provide booking services, logistics and transportation, food and beverages, and accommodations. Of course, all of these that serve the needs in the tourism sector. I skip this one. About the perception of businesses, we asked them what they perceive of the future, of the prospect for the recovery, and also the future prospect for them to come back to the businesses. SME in the tourism sector have quite pessimistic view of their future. I think about 79% would require fewer customers, would say that they will have less customers coming to their businesses. About 54% see that the economy would be weak in general, and 3.6% are concerned about the possibility for hiring labor, and they would be facing more constraints and barriers. 70% didn't answer anything. During this period, the government provided some interventions, but for the 304 businesses we interview, we have seen that 95% of them are happy, are satisfied with what the government have been provided with regard to vaccination, and 23% are satisfied with what the government has been providing for them with regard to fiscal and some other non-fiscal supports. 12% are satisfied with the social security schemes provided by the government. I will go this about how they could cope with changing business model. Only 16% of the businesses interviewed, which still operate normally, adopt new business model, while the other 84% have not changed any new strategy. For example, by acquiring or by joining with other businesses, to reduce the cost. About technological adoptions, among 165 businesses that are still up and running, 78% have the intention to use social media or other digital platform to advertise or to sell. About 21% have shown no intention at all. I think we asked them why they do not want to use technology or digital technology during that time. 60%, over 60% responded that they don't believe that by using technology during the lockdown periods or during this slow growth period would make any change. And about 40% of them responded that they had faced difficulties in hiring skilled people to support their business operation during this time. About 11% said that they do not understand about technology, so they will not use technology, or because of the constraints in accessing stable, high-quality internet. I think about 3% say that they lack capital and they do not want to go online during this period. About the constraint, out of 165 businesses, 26% consider taking financial loans, and 22.4% are not sure whether they need it or not during that time, at the time of the interview, and 51.5% do not need additional loans or finance. I think maybe this is given the reason that they were having fewer customers, and also they reduced operating hours due to the decline in their sales and revenues. Those who need more finance or loan, out of those, 62% responded that they are sure they could obtain additional loans, but 38% say that they could not obtain loans. I think this is the reason why maybe some of them say they do not need loan, or because they do not have any collateral left to acquire additional loan. So to sum up, I have run out of time, but I would like to take less than 1 minute to go through the conclusion. COVID-19 pandemic has pushed the SME in the tourism sectors, and also particularly the employees that we have seen so far into a more, hardships, particularly with regard to their socio-economic livelihoods and also the food security. I think my colleagues have presented that. And some of them have seen, faced prolonged unemployment until now. And we do not know yet to what extent they have responded to this by, looking for new coping strategies. Over half of the businesses face obstacles with financial access due to collateral or high interest rate, and maybe some, bureaucracies in obtaining financial loans. In the post-pandemic era, nearly 80% of them plan to incorporate technology and also to exercise full compliance with the health measures enforced by the governments. I think this one is in order to experience quick recovery, and also for them to allow to be able to come back, to the previous levels of a pandemic, pre-pandemic level. But it takes time, and I think this is a brief recommendations in general at the micro and the macro level. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kim. Now we come to the Q&A session. We have several Q&A. If possible, can I just ask the first two person who would like to ask question to ask in person or verbal. First is Ginanjar. Can we allow Ginanjar to speak his question, and then after that, Asi Halomoan. Ginanjar, can you now talk? Hello. Have we allowed Ginanjar to? Wait a minute. Our moderator will allow you to talk. Yeah. Okay, Ginanjar, please. Good. Thank you. So, all right. So, for Asi would like me to read the question. So this is all for Mr. Damnang. The question is that, Mr. Damnang, interesting to see that less number of people in agriculture become unemployed. Are people moving into agriculture as an alternative of employment? Also, can you say something about the informal employment during the pandemic? All right, so those are the questions that we have. First, I would give the floor to Sambat, and then after that to Sampor. Sambat.
All right, the question is more on the skill, the upskilling, the reskilling for the employment, and also some intervention from the government. And yes, some of that have been mentioned in Dr. Kamlong's presentation, and I see during the past 2 years, the government had taken many measurements in order to support the SME, especially in terms of financing. So we have currently the SME bank, and also SME bank had been established for quite a while, but their product is still challenging in order to support the SME. So as the business association, as an SME, we have been discussing with them in order to find a better way how the SME can access to finance. So currently SME funding have been spread out into MSME as well. And also there's many platforms to support the MSME in order to access to the funding, and tax incentive and also credit guarantee scheme had just been released. So these are some of the measurements from the government. In terms of skill, vocational training is still a challenge. Even though we have a digital skill gap study, we have been released. Digital skill is still a need, but in terms of vocational training, it's still a challenge because vocational training in vocational institution is not yet a place where the people will go if they want to do the upskill their training. So it depends on the employer itself in order to train. So mostly they find their own way in order to train the people. And I can say digital skill is still a need for the current situation in order for the employee to make it more productive to jump in the market.
Thank you. So I will allow Somporn, and then after that I will ask Dr. Kim Long to answer this question as well. All right, Somporn, you would like to respond?
Yes, thank you. I only have a few points to add in addition to what Sambat has mentioned. The recovery pathway requires three main players: the employers, the government, and the people who are the workers. As Sambat mentioned, the employers need the support from the government, from the market, as well as they need to reproduce and service their business. But for the employees, I think there are a lot more soft skills to be enhanced, to be improved, rather than the hard skills that they already have. And they need to digitalize the skills. To be able to use their skill in a remote way. For example, they need to be able to use the computer, the smartphone, the apps, the technology. But in addition of those digitalized skills, the soft skill that I have earlier mentioned is about the ability to work flexible, to work longer hours, or to work in either hybrid or online or on-site. This is something that I believe both employers and employees are expecting to live in this way. As soon as the employers can recover, they will need a lot of people to help with sales and marketing. So for me, personally, these are the leading skills needed for the economy recovery. But in terms of national analysis of current skill for the country, I believe there have not been sufficient study. There are some study on sectoral basis only. There's no one national study to better understand about the skill needed in the future or when the recovery comes. I would like to ask Bong Long to add because he has been in this area more than I have been. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, Dr. Kim Long, could you answer this from the perspective of tourist industry, particularly? So that is the related to the research that you have been conducting, please.
Thank you, Park, and thank you for the questions. Overall, Cambodian government introduced what we call economic stimulus package. And if we look at the statistics by December 2020, we have seen that the government injected almost $1 billion to support, including skill training and employment services of about $64 million. as somebody said, even though the program has been introduced and because of the COVID-19 infections was going on before the reopening of the economy fully by the end of 2020, I think it was quite hard for the government, for private sector in cooperation with the other civil society organizations to provide skill training, upskill training courses to the workers. And during that time, we face a lot of difficulties. So out of the economic stimulus package, the government also provided around $100 million for cash for work program for those affected by the pandemics, and particularly for those who have their employments temporarily suspended or laid off. They also receive some kind of wage subsidy. But mainly for the garment industry and also for tourism workers. So each workers receive around about $45 US for some period of times. And I think up to about 5-6 months ago that program has ended, because as the economy started to be reopened once again, the stimulus package for some areas, were particularly the loans to support SME, continue until now, but the wage support for workers have been suspended already, I think. Totally, loans to support SME is a total about $650 million US. And the tax relief and exemption from National Security Fund total about 130 million. But with regard to whether the government has considered or has introduced any skill, upskill, skill training, reskilling, upskilling, yes, the government has considered and also have been envisioned to provide this program to support those who lost or have lost the jobs, and also to provide support for SMEs and micro SME in formal sectors. And I think even though it's quite slow, I think maybe from my perspective, the government and private sector should cooperate and should expedite this kind of movements to support those who have lost jobs, and also businesses that have seen a decline in their business operation. And at the same time, the government is trying to promote a quick recovery in Cambodia, because the vaccination campaign in Cambodia has been very successfully, and over the past almost 2 months that we did not see the new infections. And only, I think 1 day ago, that a few new cases of infections. So with this in mind, I think maybe we can start the reskilling and upskilling program as soon as possible.
Thank you. Now I would like to move to Dang Nang. So let me repeat the question. So given that people in agriculture, the effect on unemployment in agriculture is relatively low, do you think that the people are moving into agriculture as alternative employment?
Okay, thank you for the question, and thank you, doctors. I would like to respond for the first question. You see that in my presentation, the respondent have the hometown in Phnom Penh around 58.2%. So it means that around 40% of them have the hometown outside Phnom Penh. Maybe they are from the different province in the country and find a job in the town. So during the COVID happened, they lost their job. After I mentioned that some men of occupation were closed, like hotel, service, and other sector. So those people, I mean that 40% of respondents will come back to their hometown at the province, and they can support their family in the agricultural sector. So they don't have, it means that they don't have another employment or occupation in agriculture, but just a short term. It means the support to the family in agriculture, especially for the seasonal crop like vegetable or others. And so they don't have the alternative, but they just support their family. And the second question related to the informal employment during the pandemic. I see that even though this study not focused at all in the formal sector, but you can see in my presentation about the informal, or we call other. It means beside the main occupation that mentioned, we have the other. So in other, we include also the informal sector like retail seller or motor taxi or food seller in front of the garment factory. So we see that those informal sector effect, it means decrease from 27.9 to 23.8, so around 4% of them that affect. In general, and my observation, I see that informal sector is mostly affect around 80 or 90% because they don't have the salary. They depend on the daily income to support their household. So in this study, we don't focus at all of this, but just my observation, I see that around 80 to 90% affects lives. And another study that I focus with that I joined with the ADIC, but we focus on the return migrant from Thailand. We see that around 90% of them that affects by the COVID, especially in they work in the informal sector in Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have time, so I would like to allow Ibu Lydia to ask some question.
Thank you. I have a question about the tourism sector to Dr. Kim Long Cheng. Can you tell us a little bit about the tourism sector in Cambodia? Is it more distributed or focused on certain areas? Because I look at your presentation and it's interesting to me to see that I think about 20% people, respondents, say that they operate business as usual. That's quite amazing, I think. So where are they, and what kind of tourism are they doing so they can survive and actually still the same condition as before the pandemic? Thank you.
Thank you so much,
please.
Lydia. Thank you, Professor Budy. The tourism sector in Cambodia, in fact, is quite concentrated in Siem Reap province. But because, we distributed the samples quite widely to the coastal provinces. So like in Kampot, in Kep, in Sihanoukville, those coastal areas also attract a lot of tourists. So I think the number, the percentage that you saw in the slides shows that, some of the respondents are from those other provinces, away from the concentration on Siem Reap province. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So before we close, I would like to ask Hanorik Tim about food security. The impact on food security for each sector has been different. Could you elaborate more why it is so? And because they all are in the same area, which is Phnom Penh area, but why each sector got different food security issue? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Budy, for questions. I think it might be because there are some unobserved factors that were not included in the study. I feel that such as the assistant, like Bokum Long also mentioned that some industry or some sector receive their
financial support or financial assistance from the government, and while the other sector might not receive the same amount of social support from the national social security. And I feel that perhaps might be because of the assistance, or might be because of lack of access. But some variable that I did not include in that might actually affects their food insecurity as well. But for the purpose of understanding the relationship between ICT and food insecurity, so I include only some variable of interest, and such as the using and have access to the ICT. So that's beyond the scope of my interest. That's why maybe the future research, or maybe other people might conduct other research that so that they can see what the difference between the food insecurity severity or the differences between the food insecurity among the sectors. That, yeah.
Thank you. So we will already come to the end of our session. Before I close, I would like to thank all agencies that have been supporting our activities, starting from Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade through their Australia-ASEAN Council. I would like to thank AV, Asian Vision Institute. I would like to also thank Forum Kajian Pembangunan, ANU Indonesia Project, and ANU Poverty and Inequality Research Center. And I also would like to thank all participants of this project. I would like to thank Dr. Kim Long as my collaborator working on this project. And I would like to thank everyone that is in the panelists, including those who are not giving a talk, but like Anna Valentina, Sampapon, and Ruslan is not here. So finally, also thanks for those who come and listen to this presentation. Hope we could learn something about what happened in Cambodia. And I know a lot of you are in Indonesia and do some comparison between what happened in Indonesia and in Cambodia. That's it from me. I give the floor back to Ibu Lydia.
Thank you, Pak Budy, and thank you for all panelists. Good luck with the rest of your research. So before I close the Zoom room, let me just share next events, which will be in July, on the 13th of July. Everyone welcome. So see you and have good lunch, everyone. See you again sometime.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you, Pak Budy.
Thank you, Pak Budy. Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you, Professor Budy,
Bye.
and welcome along and Lydia.
Forgot to thank Anna as well.
Yes.
And also, yes, other colleagues.
Yeah.
Recording stopped.
We talk more, yeah. Keep in touch. Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.